At the start of my last video, I promoted myself, but this time I'm promoting someone else. My friend Heather has a lot of medical bills that she can't afford due to getting denied by insurance and other circumstances. As is the time-honored American tradition, she's opened a crowdfunding site to help pay for it all. After announcing this in my Discord, my community was able to pretty quickly raise almost $700 in just a few hours. I'll post a link to the GoFundMe page below in the description and the comments, and if you have any extra money today, consider supporting Heather instead of me. Thank you for watching. Let's get to the video.
Gotta enjoy this.
I realize now it feels insane to be talking about anything other than Elden Ring, but I'm not going to do a video on Elden Ring. This one is just for me, you freaks. I don't need to do a video on every game I play. Plus, you already know by now that Elden Ring is Game of the Year, if not Game of the Decade, so what do you want me to say about it? Today, we are talking about Sifu. Sifu is a game that at one point probably would have been called a beat-em-up, but that genre name is the worst thing I've ever typed in a script, so I'll probably refer to it as a single-player fighter or something. It also has some roguelite mechanics that are a little confusing at first, but I'll explain exactly how everything works in detail. This game is $40, and I know that once you get into the $40 to $60 full price range for games, a lot of people are real careful with their gaming budget, and you don't want to buy something that fucking sucks. Luckily though, Sifu is good, and get ready for me to easily prove it. Sifu follows the classic kung fu movie revenge plot. The game opens up here with you playing as the hatred guy going wacko on the mic at some kind of martial arts school. You fight your way through all the students, and then kill the master, and the player character is revealed as the master's kid. Now, 8 years later, as an adult, to the extent that you can consider a 20-year-old an adult, you need to fight your way through the various locations in the city, and take revenge on the 5 goons that wiped out your entire family. There is a lot of confusion out there about how this game works, so my goal is to break this down into a pretty comprehensive look at actual mechanics. At the beginning of Sifu, once you leave the hub, you start here at the first level at age 20. The primary gimmick of Sifu is that your character is carrying a charm that will revive them if they die at the cost of aging them. The more often you die, the faster you age, and if you die at age 70 or older, it's game over. As you rampage through levels, you will gain experience and rack up a level score that can be spent at these shrines to unlock passive bonuses, and you can also use experience to unlock new moves and combos here, as well as at your hub. Every time you finish a level, you'll move on to the next one at the age you finished at, and everything else you've unlocked will carry forward. If you die or quit, you will lose all moves you don't have permanently unlocked, and you will also lose all of your shrine bonuses. You can then restart from level 1 to try to get a more optimal run, or restart from the last level you unlocked and go from there. All of this basically means that you're going to be running the game's 5 levels for optimal runs a shitload of times, like you would expect from any game with roguelite aspects. This, of course, brings up the eternal roguelite question of, is it fun to restart every time? And the answer for Sifu is absolutely yes. Sifu is a game about traditional martial arts, and as we have learned from the rise of MMA via organizations like the UFC, traditional martial arts aren't really that good for fighting a guy. However, what they are really great at is developing a sense of discipline, mastery, and cultivating your body along with your mind. If you can get really good at doing some wild kung fu shit like this, then all of a sudden, all the other challenges in your life won't seem as bad. Famous Japanese sword lunatic Miyamoto Musashi said it best in his writing. Once you master the way broadly, you see it in all things. Sifu very much integrates this idea into its game design, and at its core, it's a game about mastery. You don't just want to finish the level, you want to finish the level with no deaths. If no deaths isn't good enough for you, why not finish it taking no damage at all? Still not good enough? Finish it with no damage and unlock the secret ending then. Tough guy, and if that's not hard enough, do it at the maximum age. There's always room to make your runs more insane in Sifu. I mean, unless you're this guy, I guess. Of course, in order for a game that asks you to replay content constantly to be fun, a lot of hurdles need to be cleared. Restarting from the first level can't feel frustrating. The game needs to flow quickly and smoothly to keep itself from getting too boring or annoying. Look at Hades, for example, one of the most successful roguelites of all time. Hades has blistering fast gameplay for quick and easy restarts, and you never feel like your entire life just ended when you need to restart a run, like in more old school roguelikes. Sifu expertly provides a similar experience. I've run this first level God knows how many times, and it still has yet to stop being fun. The combat flows so well, the animations are so crisp, and the sound design is so flawless. There is nothing more satisfying than getting an extremely clean fight on a room full of goons and taking 0 or next to 0 damage. And of course, absolutely bullying the shit out of a boss that used to give you trouble is an excellent feeling.
This is your end!
Sifu is exactly what it needs to be to make this roguelite martial arts concept work, and that is a lightning fast, zero friction experience. At this point in the video, I haven't talked much about the actual details of the combat system, so I'm sure there are a few people that will be misinterpreting this game's combat as something similar to the Arkham/Assassin's Creed method. Do not be fooled by these button prompts. Sifu is significantly more difficult and refined than just hitting a button to counter. When you get into the basics, you've got a heavy attack that can be spammed, and a light attack that can be spammed, and these two buttons have a few different combos you can use, and a few others you can unlock. Then there are a handful of very simple directional combos. This isn't nearly as complicated as a fighting game with 67 button combos, but there's a lot to work with here in terms of timing and strategy. Timing a good low kick or a good head kick for takedowns is really important. And you've also got moves like this one that dodge and attack at the same time for when you really want to get crazy. There's a lot of room here for you to develop your own playstyle. Personally, I like to bully people with low kicks. You also have your focus attacks, which basically function as your meter specials. Most of these allow you to get a guaranteed attack on an enemy that usually stuns them or knocks them down at the cost of your focus meter that fills up during fights. Sifu also offers you the full suite of defensive options. If you hold the block button, you will block. Obviously, this is easy to do, but it comes at the cost of your structure bar here filling up. If this fills up, you'll be stunned. To avoid this, you can do directional dodges or parries. If you hold the block button and press down, you will dodge high attacks, and if you press up, you'll dodge low attacks. Dodges will also decrease your structure bar, which is great for avoiding stuns. And finally, we have the highest risk option, the parry, which when timed right, will open up enemies for a counterattack. You'll probably notice in the footage that I've got that I rely almost exclusively on avoids. They can be spammed quickly and offer pretty much no disadvantage. But it can be difficult to remember to avoid low attacks because 99% of this game's attacks are high. All of these combat mechanics add up to an incredibly fast and responsive combat system that very, very rarely feels unfair. If you get cornered by a bunch of dudes and get your ass kicked because you didn't space properly, it feels like your fault. If you miss an easy avoid and eat shit, it feels like your fault. There are some times where the camera can get a little wonky, but other than that, the actual combat is very satisfying. And finally, we need to address the button prompts. Like I said earlier, if you haven't played the game, these might look like press X to kill counters you see in games like Assassin's Creed, but they definitely aren't, and they don't come without risk. First of all, these prompts need to be earned. You need to either drop an enemy's health low enough or break their structure bar before they appear. Secondly, there's a chance that when you use one of these prompts, the enemy will defend your attack and get a huge combat buff and become significantly more difficult. So it's always a little bit of a risk to be hitting these prompts in a room with a lot of enemies in it. This all might seem like a lot of shit to worry about, but once you get dialed in on the defensive mechanics and get better at crowd control, you'll be taking out a dozen Instagram influencers in a nightclub in no time. The bosses, of course, follow all the same rules as the rest of the enemies in the game. All of their attacks can be blocked, dodged, or parried if you're paying attention to their patterns. Since the goal is to beat every level at the youngest age possible, your incentive is to master the bosses as well as the goons in the rest of the levels. And luckily, pretty much every single one of the 5 bosses is expertly designed. The only flaw that I can really find is that Sean, in particular, is a little bit too predictable. Hopefully, I've painted a good enough picture of how involved the combat is. No, it's probably not as complex as something like God Hand, but there is definitely a bit of a learning curve to figure out, and the end result is one of the most satisfying combat systems in recent history. It would also be very out of character for me to not draw attention to Sifu's incredibly slick art style. If you've been watching my channel for any length of time, you've probably picked up by now that my favorite art styles for video games are ones like Sifu and Ashen that are high poly games designed to invoke the feeling of low poly games. This is Necropolis, a game that I think most people would admit is low poly 3D. Take note of how shiny and clean it looks. Sifu is a game that replicates this smooth, low-poly feeling with its art style and shaders without actually sacrificing any fidelity. You can tell this is a detailed human face. This type of art style goes so much further to actually making a game feel like it was designed with a fucking passion for something, as opposed to a game like Horizon Forbidden West, which is just photoreal garbage. The insane quest for photorealism in games is a doomed journey, and one that I think the gaming industry needs to abandon. If Grand Theft Auto V looked like Sifu, would it be a worse game? No, it wouldn't. And I know you're watching this, Justin, you motherfucker. I don't want to hear it, so stop typing that comment. There are some very, very mild flaws I had with this game's design that I suppose I could also cover for the sake of integrity, to the extent that that even fucking matters on a YouTube channel. First, it feels like from a balance perspective, Sifu has an extremely strong reliance on weapons. The perks that increase weapon damage and durability will by far give you the most mileage per point and make other options seem kind of lackluster. From the standpoint of logic, it makes sense that if you needed to fight 7 people at once, you'd probably rather have a weapon than not have one, but it does seem like the game relies on them a little bit too much at times, and occasionally the animations with weapons can get a little repetitive. Actual balance of some of the moves and combos is also somewhat questionable. The strong sweep focus attack, for example, is very strong and can tend to be a little bit of a get out of jail free card in some situations, especially when you're up against an enemy with a weapon and you get to disarm them for free. For the most part though, you don't have enough focus to use it more than a few times per fight, so it's definitely not intrusive enough to damage the experience, and bosses tend to have enough health and enough structure to shrug off your focus attacks. Both the balance of the shrine rewards and the balance of the actual skill combos really didn't impact my enjoyment of the game in any way. It's just sort of a very small design gripe that I had. I'm sure some people will probably also see this video and think 5 levels isn't enough content, but I have 26 hours in this game and I still haven't quite gotten a no-death run of the tower, and I will probably never grind the final boss long enough to get a no-death clear on the Sanctuary. On top of this, it's also been confirmed by the developers that this game has been so wildly praised and successful that additional content is confirmed to be in development. So at this point, it's just up to you to decide if this is the type of game you want to spend $40 on. If this sort of God Hand style single player fighting game is something you think you will have fun trying to master, then it's definitely worth the $40. This sort of brings me to my next point, and that's the discourse around difficulty. Due to this game's success and the obvious predictable meteoric rise of Elden Ring, there have been a lot of takes about the difficulty in games. Usually, in my opinion, what a lot of people perceive as a harsh difficulty is a failure to adapt to a learning curve. Sifu has a bit of a learning curve. It will take you a little bit of time to learn the timing of all the enemies and the bosses and get a good handle on dodging and countering their attacks. If you think Sifu looks cool, don't listen to people that say it's too hard. I'm not very good at games, and I'm fucking terrible at fighting games, and I was able to get crazy runs going by just being patient and learning how to use the dodge system. And my playtime isn't exactly indicative of playing the game 14 hours a day like a speedrunner. Stuff like this boss will seem insane at first, but trust me, if you just relax and take some time to learn the rules of the system you're engaging in, you will figure it out. This goes for Elden Ring too. Once you master the way broadly, you will see it in all things. At the end of the day, Sifu is pretty much a perfect experience for what it is. I know there are a lot of turbo nerd snobs out there that will push up their glasses and say there's no such thing as a perfect game, and while that is technically correct, I don't fucking care. Some games are close enough to perfect, and Sifu is one of them. For pretty much their entire existence, video games have been trying to replicate that feeling of a good kung fu / wuxia movie. Sifu adapts that experience into a video game better than probably anything that has come before it, and I'm very excited for the new content this game is allegedly getting, and very excited for the future of Slowclap as a developer. Taking a look at their first game, Absolver, you can already see that they have improved by leaps and bounds when it comes to developing this kind of game. Absolver has a lot of the core concepts that would carry on to Sifu, but it's also a clearly much less polished and clunkier experience. Some of this is probably due to the fact that the clear goal for Absolver was for it to be the martial arts Dark Souls, but I have to imagine some of it was due to the game being Slowclap's debut. This isn't a review for Absolver, so I'm not going to spend too much time talking about it in detail, but it still has a cult following. So if the idea of a sort of Souls-inspired martial arts game with complex PvP sounds appealing to you, maybe give it a shot. When I was messing around with getting this footage, there were still a lot of players using the online system, so it's probably worth a shot. It's also on GOG, so I'll leave a link down in the description and the comments for that as well, if you would like to buy it there and support the channel. But the broader point is, if the jump in quality between Sifu and whatever Slowclap's next game is even 30% as massive as the jump in quality between Absolver and Sifu, we are in for some fucking insane projects in the future from Slowclap. Definitely keep your eyes on this studio, and really all French studios. French indie developers are kind of going fucking wild right now. They're really challenging Poland for the title of wildest indie developers. If you want to see more videos like this one, consider subscribing. A like and a comment are also really helpful. And if you want to maybe sometimes get notifications, hit the bell. But if you want to actually get notifications, you can join my Discord community with a link below and follow my announcements there. I also stream on Twitch from time to time, and if you want more ways to support the channel, the best way to do it is to head over to Patreon, where for as little as $2 a month, you can get exclusive podcast content. And my podcast, Inherently Optimistic, is available everywhere where podcasts are. And finally, you should follow me on Twitter so you don't miss any important updates. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.